Okay. Okay. So today we are going to discuss about the important interview questions. And usually, whenever you are going to appear for the any Ariba interview, and whatever the questionnaire that you are going to face, it may vary, right? And it depending on the job descriptions for whatever the job or role you are applying for this, you are giving the interview, right? And even it's also very important whatever the experience that you have shown in your resume. So sometimes interviewer they are asking the questions based on the resume as well. And even I've seen that in most of the cases, what interviewer they are doing, they are simply picking your resume and they are checking like whatever the content that you have mentioned in your resume. Accordingly, they are going to ask you the different kind of questions. Of course, they will check their JD as well. So what is their requirement? They will ask questions about that also. Even they are going to check your knowledge also, like whatever the informations you mention in your resume, either you do have that kind of knowledge or not. Okay. So that is the reason even I'm recommending to everyone whenever you are going to prepare your resume, so please mention only those points which you are already aware. So even though you sometimes for some of the solutions, some of the area you are having the working experience, you can mention those points as a working experience, right? And in some cases, for some parts, you are having only knowledge. You have never worked on that kind of functionality, that kind of solutions. You can just mention the knowledge about this topic itself. So in that cases, you will able to justify about yourself during the interview, whatever things that you know as part of the working experience, and whatever things that you are having the knowledge on top of your working experience. So that is a very important thing. Okay. And apart from that, one more thing I want to add here. So whenever you are going to prepare your resume, so sometimes it may happen, right? You may not have done some kind of implementation project and you are working only for the support in the support project. But in your resume, you have mentioned that you are having some kind of implementation knowledge as well, implementation experience as well, right? So if that in that cases, I'm recommending you have to mention the specific point which you knows about the implementation process. For example, if you talk about as part of the implementation, we have to conduct the workshop with the client. And if you are aware about this, like how workshop is going on, whatever the different kind of questionnaire we have to ask to the client, and how we have to run the workshop, how we have to demonstrate this Ariba system. If you're aware about this, then only you can mention this point. Otherwise, if you're not aware, you can avoid to mention this kind of point in the resume. You can mention the configuration knowledge as part of the implementation, whatever the configurations that you know, that kind of things you have to mention there. Okay. So we'll have this separate session on this, how to prepare this Ariba resume. We'll talk about this Soumya in coming session. But let's talk about first the important interview questions. So whenever you are going to appear for any of the interview, in that cases you may face the different questions. So initially they may ask you some kind of generic questions, that is the you can say general questions. And the first question they may ask you, please tell me about yourself. Or they may ask you, can you please brief about yourself? So in that cases, while briefing about yourself, you have to brief the important point there. Right. So people are like, we are just like briefing about myself. Like my name is ABC. My native place is this one. I'm qualified this one. This is something right. We can mention. But based on the situation, you have to first try to brief about your knowledge, about your experience, about your strength. That is an important key point we have to brief. Okay. Because the first impression is called as the last impression. So if you are going to express your knowledge, your experience in proper way initially, then definitely it's going to give the good impact on the interviewer and your interview may go smoothly. Okay. So for example, you can say if I will talk about myself, right? So I'll simply say myself is Rohit and working from in the SAP from last 15 years. I have started my career as SAP consultant, and then after that I moved to the SAP S/4HANA. Even I have done the 5 Ariba end-to-end implementation project and 2 Ariba support project as well. And even since I do have the implementation experience, I'll mention as part of the Ariba implementation. I was a part of the implementation partner team and worked closely with the client. I have done the requirement gathering, prepared the BRD documents, performed the system configurations, prepared the test script, cutover plan, and done the UAT with the business users as well. Even I'm also certified in the Ariba, so I have done my certifications in Ariba supply chain collaboration, Ariba CIG, Ariba procurement, and in S4 HANA as well. So this kind of things basically we have to mention as part of the these introductions when you are going to brief initially. Okay. Then you may receive the questions separately. How much experience do you have in the Ariba? So whatever the experience that you are holding in the Ariba, that you can mention. Even in some cases, you're not holding any kind of experience in the Ariba, but you do have this some other domain knowledge, or you're having the experience in other technology, like you are the MM person, you are having the experience in the SRM, and you have done some kind of adjustment in the experience. So in that case as well, you have to adjust the experience very carefully. So based on your knowledge, whatever the experience you do have, accordingly you can mention. One more thing I want to highlight one point here. Even recently, I was taking one interview, and I think the candidate he has mentioned the experience around 6 years in the Ariba, right? And the rest of the experience he has shown in some different domain industries as well. So showing the number of the experience is not a big thing. It's very quick. If you want to show only for the 6 years, you can show. If you want to show the experience of the 4 years, 2 years, 1 years, or even 10 years, you can just mention in the resume. But when it comes for the justification, so at that time you have to justify your experience. Either you are holding the experience of 6 years, 2 years, 4 years, 10 years, whatever. Okay. So usually what we are thinking, if you are going to show the good experience in the resume, we'll get the multiple interview calls. That's true, but that's not right as well, because if you are thinking you are having the knowledge up to this 6 years of the Ariba experience, then in that case is only it's recommended to you can mention, show the experience of the 6 years. Otherwise, if you know about the standard subject, you have not like worked on the any Ariba support or Ariba implementation project. So in that cases, I'm not recommending to mention this kind of experience. You can mention something 2 years, you can mention something 3 years, 4 years. That is something adjustable that you can do that. Okay. So you have to take care about this thing as well. So you don't have to mention the number of experience which you are unable to justify. This thing also you need to take care. Okay. Then apart from that, they may ask you what kind of project currently you're working. So whatever the your current project that you are working, that you can mention the year, or whatever the project that you have done earlier as well, you have completed earlier. Those list of the project also you can mention here. It's completely depending on a profile. Then after that, they may ask you, do you have the any experience in the implementation? So if you have shown the implementation experience, then they may not ask you this kind of questions. They will simply ask you, so whatever the module implementation you have done, accordingly they will ask you some list of the questions. Otherwise, if you have shown the support experience, then they may ask you, do you have the implementation experience, right? So if you have done the implementation, you can mention, yes, we have done the implementation, and even whatever the number of the project that you have delivered as part of the implementation, that's something also you can brief. Okay. Otherwise, in some certain cases, if you are working as part of the Ariba support project, and in that cases, if you are going to express your implementation experience, then you have to be better. You can just tell the experience knowledge, sorry, implementation knowledge. Like you can say, might be you have not done any kind of end-to-end implementation of the Ariba, but you have the knowledge about the Ariba implementation. Or if you are having the good knowledge on the system perspective, then you can mention you have done some kind of partial implementation. This kind of things you have to mention there. Okay. So usually if you have not done any kind of implementation and if you are the part of the support project, then recommendation is that you can mention something you have done the partial implementation of the Ariba and in which module you are having the good knowledge. That module implementation you can mention. You can take the name of that module. Then after that, they may ask you what was your job during the implementation, whatever the activities that you have done as part of the implementation. So in that cases, you can brief from the realization page. You can mention about the document preparation, that is the business requirement document design preparation. You can mention the list of the configurations as well, whatever the configurations that you have performed, right? Or whatever the configurations you know very well. You can mention about the test script preparation as well. So whatever the different test scenario, test script you prepared, that kind of thing also you can mention in that implementation experience, right? So like this, we have to actually handle this kind of questions, right? So these are the questions you may face as part of the generic questions they may ask you. Then based on these job descriptions or based on your profile, they may come to the solution wise questions as well. So first I'm going to brief you about the Ariba upstream interview questions, and then we'll talk about the downstream specific questions, and we'll talk about the CIJ integration questions as well. Okay. But before going further, is there any questions from your side, Soumya? Are you good at this moment?
No.
Okay. Now let's talk about this Ariba upstream interview questions. So in these cases, they may ask you different kind of questions. Let's talk about some important interview questions from the SLP perspective. So they may ask you some kind of basic questions. Can you please explain the SLP processes, or what are the processes in SLP module, right? Then in that cases, you have to mention the SLP processes, that is the supplier request, supplier registrations, qualification, and the preferred supplier, that you can mention at the high level. If they are asking to elaborate this process, then you can mention about this detailed informations about the supplier request or supplier registration, supplier qualification, and preferred supplier. You can elaborate. Okay. Then they may ask you what is the differences between the SLP and SIPM. So SIPM is the traditional solutions of the Ariba, right? And SIPM stands for the supplier informations and performance management. Whereas the SLP is this, we can say, latest technology that SAP has given as part of the Ariba supplier management. And with the help of this supply SLP solutions, we can manage the supplier in very efficient way, right? Whereas if you talk about the SIPM, that is a traditional feature, and we do have some differences as well as part of the SIPM and SLP. For example, if we talk about, like, let's take one example about the supplier qualification process. So in SLP, we do have the provision. We can perform the supplier management activities with the help of the supplier 360-degree view, right? But in case of the SIPM, this options is not available. So in SIPM, we have to perform the qualification process separately, right? And even we don't have the supplier 360-degree view options as well in SIPM. So like that, we have to brief some kind of differences between the SLP and the SIPM. Okay. Then they may ask you which process is optional in the SLP. So basically in SLP, we do have the qualification and the preferred supplier, that is optional, right? Then they may ask you some other questions as well, like how legacy suppliers come in the Ariba. That means how we can migrate the backend system supplier to the Ariba system. So we do have the provision, we can migrate the backend system supplier. So usually if your customer, they are having the backend SAP system, then in that cases, we can migrate with the help of the DRF out. We can configure the DRF out. And in that cases, we have to perform some certain configuration in ERP side. And that is actually, we have to set up the DRF IMG. And with the help of that, we can push the list of supplier from ERP to Ariba. Otherwise, if you want to do the manual load, so for that we do have the manual load as well, and that's something also we can perform. So we have to log in the Ariba system, and then we have to go to the SM administration, and then with the help of the SM administration we can actually prepare the two different kind of file, that is supplier.csv and supplier contact.csv file, and with the help of that we can manually upload the supplier in the Ariba SLP module. Okay. So this process you have to basically brief in if you're getting this kind of questions. Then what are the modular questionnaire? So modular questionnaire is mainly applicable for the certificate based questionnaire. So if the client they are expecting to have such kind of functionality where they are expecting to collect the informations about the certificate, and it's not about the matter to collect the certificate informations, they would like to receive the reminders about the supplier certificate expirations, or they would like to have the approval process on the certifications. Even we do have the options about the scoring as well. So if they are expecting this kind of functionality, then in that cases we have to go with the modular questionnaire. Okay. Then what is the differences between the ANID and the SMID? ANID stands for the Ariba Network ID, and this ANID system will generate whenever the supplier they will create their account on Ariba supplier portal, right? Whereas the SMID is the buyer supplier ID. So as a customer, whenever they will create this any supplier profile in their Ariba system, then system will generate the SMID. Okay. So you can brief about these differences, NID and the SMID. Then did you work on the supply performance module? That means they are trying to ask you, do you know about the SPM module? SPM means supply performance management. So if you do have the experience about this SPM module, then you can brief, right? Otherwise, even though in some cases it may happen you are not aware about the SPM module, then in that cases you can simply mention that like you have never worked on the SPM module, but you know about the SPM module, right? And even you can just give more detail about this SPM module. That is actually SPM module is mainly used to measure the performance of the supplier, and we are going to use the surveys and KPIs. So we will have the list of the surveys. Survey means you can say a list of the questionnaire in simple. And those questionnaires will link with the list of the KPIs as well. And generally, in case of the performance measurement, as a customer, we are going to circulate the surveys to the internal team member, and the internal team member they have to give their input. And based on that, system is going to calculate the scores, and accordingly, we have to measure that either supplier has achieved a good score or average score, whatever. And if you want to take some kind of action, you can take the actions. You can develop some kind of action point as well. Okay. Then how to enable the envelope bidding? So this is part of the Ariba sourcing module. And in that cases, we have to enable the envelope bidding. First, we have to enable with the help of the ICM parameter. So ICM means Intelligent Configuration Manager. You can find out inside the administration. And then we have to enable the envelope rule at the template level. So whatever the particular template that you created, at the template level, we have to enable the envelope bidding. And then whatever the number of envelope, that's something you are expecting, you can define at the template level itself. Okay. Can bidder agreement be changed? So that means can we change this bidder agreement? And this is applicable when any supplier they are going to participate against your sourcing event. So when they will click on this review prerequisites, system will display the bidder agreement. So can we change the bidder agreement? Yes, we can change it. So with the help of the branding settings, we can change this, and branding settings we can find out under the customization manager. Okay. Is it possible or can it be achieved if without accepting the bidder agreement, supplier can only view the event details that is not able to edit it? So that is the standard process itself, right? Whenever you are going to invite any supplier to participate in the event, they will able to see the event informations, and system will not allow them to submit the response. They will not be able to do any kind of adjustment there, right? So that is something is possible. Then what is a sourcing library? Sourcing library is a kind of directory we can say in Ariba, and we can pre-configure the list of the documents in the sourcing library, and whenever you want to reuse the documents we can actually reuse. It's not about you can reuse the complete document, but whatever the particular content that something is applicable in your cases. You can reuse any of the particular informations from the sourcing library. Then the next question is that please explain me about Ariba Discovery, how we can use Ariba Discovery in our daily business, how is it linked to Ariba network, what are the interfaces needed to connect with Ariba network, can we connect Ariba Discovery only with upstream or also with downstream. So in this kind of scenario, in this kind of questions, you have to brief about the Ariba Discovery, what is the Ariba Discovery, and generally Ariba Discovery is applicable for the open bidding process where customer they don't want to include any of the specific supplier for the sourcing event, right? And even they don't want to add the item information separately. And in their cases, they can enable this Ariba Discovery, right? This is a kind of additional feature. It is free of cost actually, but by default, this functionality will not be available to the customer side. And if customer they want to enable this feature, they have to reach out to Ariba customer support team, right? So we can say, so you have to actually brief about this Ariba discovery process itself. You have to tell them, right? And then whatever the interfaces, that's something needed. So we require the Ariba buyer and supplier network link as well, right? And then if customer they would like to create the requisitions in the Ariba procurement with the reference of the bid, what we are going to receive as part of Ariba discovery, then we can connect the Ariba sourcing module or we can say Ariba discovery with the Ariba downstream as well, right? That's something you can mention there. Okay. Then we can see we have some questions. Sourcing request has the approval. Of course, we do have the approval options for the sourcing request and it depending on the client requirement. Then what is the contract line item document? So in these cases, you can mention contract line item document is a part of the Ariba contract to capture the line item informations and it flows to the backend system. So generally contract line item document will be applicable if your customer they are not having the Ariba procurement license, they do have only Ariba, you can say upstream or strategic sourcing license, then in their cases this contract line item document will be applicable. If I choose a clause from the clause library to include into in a contract workspace, then some clause specific approval should be added to that particular you can say contract workspace. How to achieve it? So this question is talking about the clause library, right? Clause library is just like as a sourcing library, and we can pre-configure the list of the clauses. We can import the list of the clauses. We can store, right? And a question is talking here. If you are going to choose any clause from the clause library, and the expectation is that system should add the specific approval for that clauses. So can we achieve it? Answer is that yes, we can achieve it. But how we can achieve it? For this, while creating this clause library, you must have to add the approval workflow there. Then accordingly, the respective approvers will come in the picture whenever you are going to include that clauses from the clause library. Okay. Can additional approval to be added based upon the bid amount that supplier submit? Yes, that something is possible. Based on this setup, we can do that. How supplier self-registration process is going to configure. This is about this SLP process itself. And in these cases, we have to basically enable the ICM parameter from the customer side. And even we have to raise the SR to Ariba customer support team. Ariba customer support team, they have to turn on the feature, right? And then we have to actually create this self-supplier registration link. So based on the customer database, we have to generate some link we can find out as standard, but client name and data based on the database, I mean data center, we have to actually update the URL there. That URL we have to actually prepare. Then how to configure a duplicate supply check while creating the supply request? It's pretty much simple questions. So while adding any questionnaire at the in the supplier template, SLP template, And especially if we talk about as part of the supply request, we do have the options that is the duplicate supply check options, right? If you want to include as part of duplicate supply check, that's something we can include there. Okay. The next question we can see if there are multiple external questionnaires are available, then if we want a particular external questionnaire should be automatically chosen and sent to vendor. How it can be achieved? It's also very simple. We can mark the questionnaires as a mandatory while configuring the questionnaires at the template level. Questionnaire in the sense we have to mark the survey or entire documents as a mandatory there. Okay. Then while creating the supply request to registration, I want certain field like company name, etc. to be auto-populated. How to achieve this? So this is also a kind of general requirement you may receive while working on the implementation project as well. And we can take a very simple example, like if you see in the supplier request form, we do have the supplier name, supplier address, right? And even we can include some other field as well as part of the example. Then if you see in the supplier registration questionnaire also, you may have the supplier name, supplier address. So in that cases, definitely supplier, or if you see from the customer perspective as well, they will not expect to enter the informations manually in supplier registration questionnaire. So in that cases, they will expect why not the information should automatically populate from the supplier request itself because we have earlier filled out in the supplier request form, right? So how we can do that? We can achieve with the help of the supplier field mapping. Okay. So we have to just make sure whatever the supplier field mapping value that you have given while configuring the supplier request template, the same supplier field mapping we have to use in the particular field in the supplier registration template as well under the particular questionnaire. Okay. Then whom should be approached for the roles to be allocated for a requester or user? How should I know that I need the list of the roles to perform any specific activity? Do we have any standard document where we have roles and its description? If so, where can I find them? This kind of questions also you may receive. So this is basically our job as a Ariba consultant, and we can extract the list of the roles from the system itself. SAP has given the list of the standard groups. Group means you can say role. We can extract the list of the groups and then we can see the descriptions as well. Based on that, you will have the understanding. How you configure DocuSign with Ariba in contract. So this is applicable in case if your customer they are having the requirement to integrate the DocuSign, right, with the Ariba contract module to perform the e-signature activities. So in that case as well, we have to first enable the parameter with the help of the ICM configurations, right? And even some parameters we can control by ourselves. And in some parameter we required Ariba customer support team help. And that's something we can do by raising the SR. Then after that, we have to come to the project manager and we'll see the options of the signature provider. And there we have to enter the informations that is API keys, right? Demo account options we can select, and then we have to click on the like options. Then system will ask you to log in by your credentials, and whatever the credentials is applicable that we can enter there, and accordingly you can just achieve the basic integrations here. Okay. Then explain the main functions of the access control, and in this cases we can control the like some kind of access which team member can view the project, right? And this is also a kind of parameter based feature. We have to set up the access control informations in the ICM parameter as well, right? What is the intelligent configuration manager? That means ICM configurations. So ICM configuration is very important in the Ariba. And with the help of this ISM configurations, we can actually turn on or turn off. We can adjust any parameter or any kind of functionality in the Ariba, right? Then what is the task and what are the different types of tasks we can find out inside the template. So task is just like a kind of, you can say, checklist, right? Or list of the activities which we are going to perform as a customer while creating any particular project. And what different types of tasks we do have? So we do have the to-do task, we do have the review task, we do have the approval task, negotiation task, notification task, even we do have the signature task. Signature task is applicable only in case of the contract itself, right? So like that, you will see the list of the task in the at the template level, right? Then what configurations we need to do in Ariba for a supplier which is mapped to multiple company code, purchasing org, etc. To send such data to ERP backend. So in that cases, whenever we are going to configure the internal registration questionnaire initially, we have to give the options to choose the multiple purchasing or multiple company code options. That's something we have to allow at the template level. So this was some list of these like that questionnaire that is relevant to the upstream, which may see you may face some kind of during the interview as well, right? So all these questions I have captured from different participant, right? So that's why I thought to share with you, and you have to prepare like this, right? Now next we'll talk about the Ariba downstream questionnaire. But before that, do you have any questions or comments here?
No, sir.
Okay. Now let's talk about this downstream questionnaire. So some common questions you may see as part of the Ariba downstream as well. So you may get some kind of questions. What is the guided buying and why guided buying is needed, right? Even though if client they are having Ariba buying invoicing, then why basically customer they have to go with the guided buying. In that cases, we can just explain that like GB guided buying is not only offering the user interface, but apart from that, we do have some other functionality as well in the guided buying, that is landing page functionalities. We do have the policy functionalities. We do have the technical sourcing functionalities as well, like low touch, high touch, right? So if customer they want to utilize this kind of functionalities, then in that cases, they have to go with the guided buying. Okay. Otherwise, apart from this, you can also mention some other like features of the guided buying, the simplified process of the guided buying. That's something also we can you can explain. Okay. Now, next question we can see once the order confirmation is sent by the supplier, can they edit this? If yes, how? This kind of things we can control with the help of the transactions rule on Ariba buyer portal. So we can say yes, that is possible. What are the files you are going to load as part of this user setup in Ariba? So we can mention you can mention the two file, that is user data consolidated file and user group mapping, or even you can say user to group mapping data consolidated file. These two file we have to actually prepare and we have to upload inside the data import and export, right? Then whatever the files you are going to prepare for the supplier setup in the Ariba downstream, so you can mention this list of the four files, right? This you can just brief. What are the types of the punch out catalog? So we do have the two types of punch out catalog, that is the label one, label two, right? And we discussed earlier about the punch out catalog during our previous session, right? So you can mention the descriptions or the detailed informations about the punch out catalog. You can brief about the types of the punch out catalog as well. Then the next question we can see, if in one node approver is catalog manager group and in another node commodity code manager group, if same manager is getting repeated in these two groups, then how overcome this issue? So that means it's talking about the filter rules of the approval workflow, which we have discussed in the previous session as well, right? So you can just explain the functionality about the filter rule itself. Then from SAP point of view, as you know, in backend SAP system, we do have the concept of the number range, but in Ariba side, we don't have the concept of the number range. But if customer they are expecting to have the same PO number of your ERP PO number to Ariba, how you can achieve this? Even the same questions we have also discussed earlier during our CIG session, right? So you can simply tell them like we have to enable the parameter and the parameter name is something copy ERP PO number to Ariba, and this parameter needs to be enabled by the Ariba customer support team. Okay. Then what is the PO flip? So converting the purchase order into the invoice, that is called as that PO flip functionalities, right? How you are going to manage the guided buying landing page configuration, this thing also we have discussed in detail level during our downstream session, right? So you can mention that like we do have the options, we can configure the landing pages with the help of the JSON file or with the help of this Excel sheet. Even we can do with the help of the user interface as well. That's something you can brief. What is the three bits and buy concept? So three bits and buy means if you just try to understand, sounds like you should have the three bits. You should have the bid means quotation from three supplier, but you have to buy only from a single supplier, right? That means receiving the bids from multiple supplier, purchasing from a single supplier. That is the concept of this three bids and buy concept. Okay. Then explain the business process like how the requirement gets generated and how it gets converted into purchase order. So this is applicable like I mean same thing what we have discussed in previous session. I hope you are already aware about this. So in these cases you have to explain the purchase equations to the payment process, but you have to explain in the layman language. Like once you receive the internal requirement for some, you can take some example as well, right? And then based on that you will check the material availability internally. Material means you can choose any product here, and then you are going to erase the purchase equations, then purchase order, receiving, invoicing, this kind of process you have to brief. Okay. Then what is a partition supplier? Partition supplier basically applicable as part of this, like Ariba downstream itself. You can say simply purchasing supplier, right? And the same thing we discussed during our supplier manager configurations as well, right? So these are the questions, some sample questions you may see during the Ariba downstream interview as well. Now let's talk about something important interview questions, that is the CIG related interview questions. Okay. And if you talk about as part of this CIG specific questionnaires, so you may see different kind of questionnaires like how you can configure the following scenario, or how you can do the integration of your backend SAP RFQ documents from your backend system to the Ariba. What are the configurations you have to perform? This kind of questions they may ask you, right? And even we discussed about this as well, but I just highlighted here some at high level. You can just mention like you have to set up the interface, we have to configure the application specific settings, we have to maintain the parameters, right, that we have discussed. Then we have to create the integration project on the CIG portal. We have to configure the business applications IDs as well on the Ariba buyer portal. So these are the configurations you have to mention during the interview. Now, one thing I would like to add here from my side, usually sometimes if you are not clear, so what we are explaining, we are including some technical configurations as well that usually we are not doing. Right. Even in one of the, like I was taking one interview earlier, I asked that about the master data integration configuration questions. Now the person is explaining about like, okay, we have to maintain the certificate, we have to configure the RFC, we have to configure the logical port. So that is right. I'm not saying that's not the right. But thing is that this is done by the basis team, right? If you know how to do that, then you can explain, because if you are going to receive any kind of next follow-up questions, you will able to manage it. Otherwise, if you are working as a functional consultant, you know about the functional part, not the technical part. And if you are going to explain this kind of configuration, then what is the sense of this kind of configurations which you are explaining, right? So that the reason we don't have to include those kind of configurations. So we have to only brief those configurations which you have done, which we have to do as a Ariba consultant. Okay. Otherwise, if they are asking, then you can mention like these configurations are the prerequisite, but that is done by the basis team. And once basis team, they will complete those configurations. Then after that, we have to perform our configurations here. Okay. Then which transactions we use to check the ERP side about any kind of master data transaction, master data failure. So we do have the one and one place, that is the SRT money. right? Even if you want to deep dive about this SRT money failure, then we can go in the SLG1 as well, right? Then what configurations we need to do in ERP side for master data flow from ERP side? So this is questions I just highlighted earlier. So in this question, you have to brief only about the functional configurations which you are going to perform. So you can mention here something sending the SAP informations to CIG, mapping the variant and partitions, configure the incremental extract event, configure the event linkage, maintain the parameters, maintain the filters, maintain system ID, configure the connections parameter, set up the interface. So this list of the configurations, that's something you can brief as part of these questions here. And even we discussed all these configurations in detail level, right? I hope you're already having this kind of informations. Then next question we can see how a custom field if added in contract. This is one example actually is mapped from Ariba to ERP system. So in that case, so we have to be set up from the Ariba point of view as part of the custom mapping, right? And even from ERP point of view, we have to contact to the ABAP consultant, right? And they will add that particular, like a custom field in that particular function module or whatever is applicable, right? Now, next question is that before we bring the supplier master data from ERP side to Ariba, which things we need to set up in Ariba side? You can just mention all this point here, right? So this kind of things we have to set up before we are going to migrate the list of the supplier, right? Then how we can integrate supplier data from Ariba to ERP and vice versa? So you can just mention about the configurations which we have discussed earlier. That means set up the ERP integrations under the SM administration, and at least we should have the integration project available on the CIG portal, and the status should be in the testing status. We have to set up the interface from the ERP point of view, and we have to include the SLP relevant options there. And even if you want to migrate the supplier from ERP to Ariba, so since it's talking about vice versa, so you must have to perform the DRF IMG setup as well that you can brief here. Okay. Then how can we configure the automatic supplier delta load from ERP to Ariba system? This is same thing as part of the master data integration setup, what we discussed earlier. Same thing we can just mention here, and then you can mention we have to run the master data program, right? So this master data program executions, it may happen in the batch job. So we have to provide the program name and the variant name, whatever you created. Based on that, the base system, they will schedule the batch job, but that means background job in the ERP system, right? Then how contract are integrated. So how you're going to integrate the Ariba contract module. For that, we have to perform these configurations. That is, we have to set up the endpoint configurations and document routing on the Ariba buyer portal, right? Then integration project, we have to create and include the contract relevant document type there. Then we have to set up the interface under the strategic sourcing setup in the ASAP ERP system that you can mention there. Then when a supplier is only a qualified supplier, then only it should be flow to backend system. How we can achieve this? It's very simple configurations, right? We have seen that while talking about the SM administration configuration. So we have to set up the initial supplier synchronization, right, as a qualified under the ERP integration. Can we integrate partner functions from S4 to Ariba? So partner function is a part of the S4, like side. So usually we don't have any standard provision to integrate the partner functions. That's something we can't do that. We can create the partner functions with the reference of the Ariba vendor that we can do that. Otherwise partner functions we can't integrate. Okay, I think this question is repeated here. Just you can ignore. Then last questions we can see how you are going to investigate if the PO is stuck in the ordering status. This is the very common questions you may see, right? And it's not about only these particular transactions. You can take the any example. Sometime You send out the contract from the Ariba to ERP system, but in in Ariba side, it looks like you send out the contract by hitting the send to external. But in the backend SAP side, you're not able to see the contract, right? So in that case as well, how you are going to investigate this issue? So you can take the example of any integration failure, and if they are going to ask you how you are going to investigate, so you have to understand the integration touch point. Okay, so we have to follow the step-by-step process to check the integration touch point. If you talk about specific to these cases, so first you have to check from Ariba side. Do you see any kind of problem in the Ariba side? Do you see any kind of error in the history tab? If yes, that means you have the problem in Ariba. Otherwise, from Ariba perspective, you can't see the any kind of problem. Even you can just revalidate the setup as well, right? Whatever the partition supply setup you have done, that's something also you can validate, right? Might be sometimes a number, an ID is missing, right? This kind of thing also may happen. I'm just giving some potential cause here, right? So like that, we have to check from the Ariba perspective. If it looks good from Ariba perspective, then we have to go to the CIG portal under the transactions tracker. And there you can validate, you can find out the AP number there, and based on that, you have to check the status. Is there any error on the CIG portal? If yes, work on that error. If not, if that is completed, then you have to go in the SAP ERP system. You can run the transactions code, that is SRT money. You have to check the status in SRT money, what error system has raised. Even if you want to deep dive, you can go and you can open the SLG1. There also you can find out the error log in detail level. Accordingly, based on the nature of the error, you have to find out why the Ariba system has not received the confirmation from the ERP system. So like that, we have to check the different parameter. There could be a number of the regions. So we have to just do investigation in proper way, and then only we will able to find out the cause. Okay. So overall, I mean to say that whenever you are going to receive this kind of questions, so you have to explain the step-by-step process as part of the different integration test point. That means Ariba side investigation, CIG side investigation, and the ERP side investigation. And investigation means it's not about only this, you check the history tab in the Ariba side, that's it. Your job is done. No. You also have to check the setup as well. Sometime you may miss something from the master data point of view in the setup. That may also create the problem. Okay. So like that, you have to actually handle these different kind of questions, right? I'll send you this list of the interview questions over your email, right? So just like this, you may see the different kind of interview questions you may face, right? So overall, if you talk about this list of the interview questions, so it is depending mostly it depending on your that subjective knowledge, how good you are from the concept point of view. So that's why I was repeating from day one itself. If your concept is clear, right, it's very easy to clear the any of the interview. Of course, we have to do some kind of adjustment in some areas, like as part of the implementation. I will talk about the implementation in next session in detail level, right? So in that cases, we have to do some kind of adjustment. Even you may get some kind of other questions, like they may ask you while implementing the Ariba module, have you faced some kind of challenges, right? Can you please brief some list of the challenges which you have faced during the implementation? Even from support point of view also, they may ask you, can you please tell me some list of the challenging ticket which you have received where you faced lots of challenges. I'll give you all the information separately, right, in the coming session. So like these questions they may ask you, and in these cases we can do some adjustment. So I'll help you on this kind of questions as well, but please try to focus on your core knowledge. If your core knowledge is good, definitely it becomes easy to crack the interview. Okay. All right. So thank you. Thanks for your time. And that's it for today. We'll see you tomorrow. Thank you.
Thank you.